There's two ways to live your life to me. There's the decision to be just average and ordinary and exist. And then there's this other decision and a set of actions that go with it for life, which is what you've done. Even having been knocked down, even got incarcerated, he's chosen, I want to live an extraordinary life. Sell me on why I should pursue that life if I'm listening to it today.
Everyone has to have their own vision for their future, what they want. I've been a rich man and been extremely happy. I've been a rich man and been very unhappy, very miserable. I've been poor and very miserable as well. But never once in my life, since I'm an adult, have I been poor and happy. Now, I'm not saying you have to be the richest person in the world, but if there's a certain amount of money you need to make, if you want to live a great life, if you want to really, go after your interests and have free time and have good medical care, a nice place to live, take care of your family, your children, donate to the places and the causes that you believe in, and just have fun, then there's going to be a certain amount of money you need to make. That number is up to you. It's different for everybody. And then you better make sure that your desire, you have that vision, your standard, your work ethic is congruent with that. If you have champagne vision and a beer work ethic, a beer standard, that ain't gonna work out so well.
So good. All right, welcome back to the show, everybody. So I'd say probably 7 or 8 years I've wanted to have this man on the show. I did his show like a million years ago. And I got to tell you guys something. I don't know if a surprise is the right word, but pleasantly happy, I guess. I liked him so much personally when I met him. Maybe a little bit different than his character in the movie, like I really, really enjoyed his company. And I consider him probably the best sales trainer there is going in the world today, number one. He does a whole bunch of other things too, but his style and the way he teaches sales is probably what I'm most aligned with. But I really enjoyed his company, and I think you're going to enjoy his company today as well, because we're going to have a little bit of a different conversation than you've probably seen him on other podcasts. So here's who he is. He's the Wolf of Wall Street. That's how you really know him. But I know him as like a really good man and a great, great sales trainer. Super talented. Jordan Belfort, welcome to the show.
Just very nice, Ed. And I feel the same about you, obviously. You were on my podcast a zillion years ago, and it was one of my best, performing podcasts. I don't do them. I'm so busy right now. I really haven't done podcasts in a couple of years, but you were great. And so it's great to be back,
Yeah, it's great to be with you, brother. So, you've been on every podcast, so I want to have a little bit of a different conversation with you and do stuff that, like, it's hard for a guy at your stature and your level for people when they listen to you to like relate to the story at all, right? Like, it's one of the great stories of all time. But one of the theories I have about what holds people back is they get attached to a story about themselves. Something that happened when they were a kid, or their divorce, or a business setback. They get attached to a story and then, or who they believe they are, and then it almost just, it reconfirms the story over and over again in their life. And in your case, that one window of your life is like the story, right? And it's how everybody knows you. To some extent, I know it was a great thing because you got notoriety from it, but I have to think there's a part that's like, all right, I was a kid, I was young, like I'm a different human being now. How did you break out of that? Like, how did you change the narrative of this is who you are in your life? And I know you probably don't get asked that a lot, or if ever, but I'm curious because I think people listening are attached to this story and they got to change the narrative.
It's a good question. I mean, for starters, I would say that I personally, in my own mind, never had an issue with like breaking out of that. Like, I knew I wasn't that guy anymore. And I think that's because that wasn't the guy I was when I started. In other words, so, it wasn't like I had to find some new person. It was more about rediscovering the person I was before I veered off course and went hog wild. And listen, I never want to minimize what I did, but the fact is I was on Wall Street, and, shit that goes down on Wall Street, like what I did is nothing in compared to what happened during the GFC, the global financial crisis, where Goldman bankrupted Iceland, and Greece. I mean, and I'm not trying to say two wrongs make a right, not minimizing, But it wasn't like, after the GFC, it was like, you see, I mean, I've been saying, I'm like, guys, and I deserve to go to jail. I made mistakes. I manipulated stocks. Yeah, I'm not trying to minimize that. So, but in my own mind, it wasn't like I'm a criminal. I never got in trouble in my life. I come from a family where no one ever got in trouble. My parents are the most honest. My dad, may he rest in peace, is honest. My mom is, the oldest woman in New York State to pass the bar. She was a CPA back in the 50s when women were not in the workplace like that. She was in the city at one of the big, the 8 back then. Now it's like probably the big 3 or 4 accounting firms,
Yeah.
right? So it wasn't like this thing. I'm like, okay, I have to learn to be a better person. It's more like, wow, I really took a left turn in Albuquerque, and and I think I have to examine one thing. It's probably my values,
Mm.
and I think that's really what really got corrupted in the sense of putting a value on money above everything else. Like how do you make more? That question you ask yourself, how do you make more? Versus how do I give more value to people? Because the bottom line is business, and making money the right way is simply about knowing how to monetize value. If you have something valuable that helps people, you can get rich. And the more people you help, the richer you're going to get if you know the rules of business. So those and those rules I do know quite well, and I learned a lot of them from failing. I learned them from my failures, and I learned them from my successes, but more from my failures, by the way, than my successes. That's how you learn and you grow. And of course, back in my day, there was no internet, there were no courses, there weren't really mentors like there are today. So you had to figure a lot of out on your own. You didn't have entrepreneurship courses. There are some great mentors out there, teachers. Well, you're one of them, right? There's some great people, right? So I think for me, it wasn't so much about having to discover a new person, but to rediscover the old person. Now, in terms of changing people's minds about you, that's a different side of the story. So, I mean, if you talk about self-belief, I didn't have an issue with that. I knew I'd never get in trouble again. And I veered away from anything that could even possibly get me in trouble, right? I don't, listen, I could have launched a meme coin 10 times and made 30, 50, $100 million. Never did. Could have launched NFTs. Never did. All the things that I knew I could make quick hits. And I always had this idea, well, if I make a ton of money, is someone else losing money as a result of me making money? And if that's what's going to happen, I'm not into it. I've been down that road before, and it doesn't feel good. Thankfully, I have enough money right now. I don't need to do that. And I would never sacrifice my ethics that way, because it doesn't end well and you don't feel good after anyway. So those are sort of like the rules that I live by right now. And it's cost me a lot of opportunity. I could have made a lot more money than I have, but I didn't launch a coin. I didn't do an NFT. I didn't engage in any of that nonsense. And I think I'm better off for it, at least inside. Maybe my bank account doesn't have as many zeros as it could have had, but it has enough zeros for me to live the life I want.
To say that, you got enough zeros. I have this theory lately, and I'm really curious. You and I could speak to this, I think, at our age too. And this is not something you'd hear on like most motivation or self-help or business podcasts, but it's something I wanted to ask you about. So if you look at like climbing the ladder of life, right? Like when you're young and you don't have a lot of responsibilities and single, I think every rung, for the most part, if you do it ethically, is worth whatever the trade-off is to climb higher, right? This is I've always wanted to ask you this since we met. And but there is a point, in my opinion, as I've gotten older, that these extra rungs, and this may not affect everybody listening today, but it will at some point, hopefully in your life, where you've climbed pretty high and you do have some zeros in your bank account now. Maybe you got a little notoriety. No one ever tells you it's worth evaluating the trade-off for the next rung, right? There really is. At some point on the climb, in my opinion, you do need to start to evaluate, how's this affecting my health, my mental health, my relationships? No one ever talks about this. And I started climbing, I had a TV show with NBC, and eventually I was like, I don't know if this next rung I'm grabbing for is worth the trade-off in the climb. And I've kind of observed that with you. Like you got all this, you got hot. I mean, you are hot, like a lot of notoriety, but I also know you like, you're kind of like a romantic dude. Like you love your relationships. You love the significant person in your life. Like, did you do that at some point? What would your advice be to someone? Like, climb your tail off now, but at some point, you got to start looking at this stuff, right?
Sure. I mean, obviously, like, listen, if you're still acting the same way when you're in your 50s as you are when you were in your 20s, or you're still asking yourself the same questions, then you haven't really lived. You haven't grown. You have a real issue, right? And I think for someone who's in their 20s or their 30s, that is a time when you want to actually literally go out there and you want to focus on staking your claim and making, a ton of money, because I think money matters. It is important. Now, again, that depends on how you value money. Everyone has their own number and their own standard of what they want to make. So, as long as you're congruent with what your belief systems are about, I want to be super rich, but I don't really want to put in the effort. Well, that's not going to really end that well, right? But for people like us who had a desire to really be successful and make a lot and live a great life financially, right? There's a time when you got to, put the hours in. Now, just to be clear, I still put the hours in right now, like, because I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like if I don't look at my work as work.
Right. Everybody, just so you know, this is a Saturday. He and I are doing this on a Saturday morning. So most people are cooning on the weekends. He and I are still crushing it. So keep that in context.
But I was coding since 7 a.m. this morning. All right. I've been coding since 7. I code. I'm an AI company, and I've been coding and debugging. I did it 17 hours. I mean, I'm on a fucking tear.
Yeah.
But to me, like, it's not work. I enjoy it. It keeps me stimulated. I would go crazy if I just sat there, right? But I still worked out yesterday. My wife is here. In other words, it's balanced. But here's the point that I think you were really making, which is a good one. And, there's a difference when you're saying, I want to climb higher and make more. The most money I ever made is not when I'm working the hardest necessarily. It's like, like if you have a good business and you built it the right way, whether you make $1 million a year, 10 million, or 100 million is really more a function of how well the business was structured, what industry you're in, and because, and the timing too, by the way. But the point is, you really have to work harder to make a lot more money. It's really, some of it is luck, by the way. Some people get lucky. And when I say luck, it's not like, you just know there's a lot of massive power, but we're in the right place, right time, and then you had the right idea, you executed, right? So you could work your ass off and make $200,000 a year in one industry. You can work your ass off in another and make 10, or then cash out for 50 or $1 billion. So it's not so much that it's like, I have to work harder to make more. The thing you're talking about is like chasing after every opportunity.
Exactly. Yes.
Like you have to, like, you want to be more significant. And then you find out that all you're doing basically is executing on ideas, and you're not really living a life. That's a very different thing.
Correct. Yeah, and I think people should know that. I'm big on it right now because I don't think most successful people will warn you about it. And I just think, like in my case, like there's a point where you got to evaluate what you are trading for the pursuit of significance, money, whatever it is. And by the way, I totally agree with you. I've been happy poor and happy rich. Happy rich is a zillion times better. Being able to take care of your family. I was thinking about the other day, I knew you were coming on, and actually my son, who reached out to you to help you with your golf game a little bit. My son said, oh, so do I, brother. We got to play together. You'll feel much better about your game. But my son will tell you this. I said, I really liked him. Like, I really liked him. Like, I think had it been at a different time in both our lives, he and I would have been very close friends. I just enjoyed his company. Something about our energy that was very similar. And I said to Max, my son, I said, I liked him like instantly, like shook his hand and liked him. And Max says, Dad, you got to ask him about this, because part of the things he's been talking about lately is like in sales is like the first 4 seconds. Will you talk about that for a second so everybody gets that? Because I think most people think I'm not in sales. Yes, you are.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, of course, listen, I think, sometimes, there's someone, and it's kind of like you're very similar. So it's very easy to get into rapport with someone who's similar to you, right? And also, one of the things that's a benefit to me, or a detriment to some people, I guess, is that everyone knows me pretty well, my reputation. So you could love me or hate me, whatever. If you want to hate me, what I did 38 years ago, go ahead. I'm happy to. The haters' drive engagement is more than the lovers anyway. Right? But either way, so for me, it's pretty like I go in with a lot of sort of backstory and a lot of credentials already loaded in, and you the same. Okay, you the same, right? But there is this idea, and it's very true in terms of this initial impression, and it's just literally, and it's very simple and it's learnable in terms of how you make eye contact, how you shake hands with somebody, how close do you stand, what's your tonality like? You're like, hey, nice to meet you. But it's simple stuff that's learnable, but it's powerful. And then what happens though, and I think what people don't realize is that you said that to your son, like I like the guy instantly, but if I would have revealed myself to be in second number 8 or second number 30 or in minute number 5, you would have said, John, the guy's an idiot. I hated him the second I laid eyes on him.
Right.
Like,
True.
like all those first few seconds do is advise you the opportunity to then prove that your first impression was correct. So you have to be very. It's not like you make a good first impression and now I'm an asshole. It's
True.
Like the first impression opens up the ability for them to get the deeper rapport. Rapport is not a constant, right? But
Yeah.
that's one of these people to be very, very aware of is that, you're one stupid statement away from revealing yourself to be, a novice or an asshole. And you have to really, when you're, especially in a business setting, now when you're with your friends, it's very different. You just want to be you. Although, like, again, they always say when you meet someone for the first time, a girl or a guy, I said my representative. It's like my best self.
Right. Everybody. Right. That's right. You do. But I also think like today, 30 years ago, a lot of the population weren't good at communication and selling, but like now it's at an all-time low because of the internet, because kids are in their phones. I mean, people's interpersonal. I was here in the hotel last night and a bunch of young people got in the elevator with me. A couple of them knew who I was, and I couldn't get any of them to even look me in the eye or introduce themselves. And that's not a global criticism, but like he has this thing you guys called the straight line system that I think you all should go get if you want to learn to sell and communicate better, because you get into the real stuff. And let's just give everyone a little flavor here. One thing you're great at when you speak on stage right now today, one-on-one, is your tonality. Your tonality, you know how to use inflection in your voice. You know how one tone is to command respect and you're an authority figure. Another one's like, hey, to ease things up. You do that very well. Speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's obviously, one of the things I'm known for is teaching tonality. And I think there are some people that naturally have really, really great tonality. I'm one of them for sure, right? You are too. There's some, but most people don't really have that gift. It really comes much less naturally. But again, the good news is it's an entirely learnable skill. And the way you learn it is by the first thing is understanding, like, okay, well, what are they? You don't know what you don't know, right? You're unconsciously incompetent, right? And then the idea is like someone raises your awareness and become consciously incompetent. Like, it's like, oh my God. So wait, I know he sounds so good for a reason. Like when Leo in the movie, right? Leo sounded so amazing on the phone and when he gave the speeches, right? Well, he didn't sound like that before I met him when he would pick up a phone to try to sell stock. I trained him, and obviously he's an immensely talented individual.
Wow, okay.
But until he was trained, he didn't. And of course, he's smart enough to know, show me how to do this. What is the system? How do you sound the way you sound, right? And, I broke it down from into these core tonalities, and I showed him, here's where you lower your voice, here's how you speak with certainty, here are the gestures, he even made the gestures I made and everything. So it's a combination of body language, tonality. And the thing is, once you become aware, wait, there are tonalities, well, the first step then is to say, okay, well, in a sale, let me granularly, if I had a script, then you start with the script, right? Because that's the only way to learn it. Where would I speak with certainty? Where would I lower my voice? Where would I speak with sincerity and empathy? Where would I say, like, sound fair enough? You're reasonable. I'm reasonable, right? Where would I say, does the idea make sense? Do you like the idea? Like, hypothetically, there's all, right? Now, when you actually have that broken down for you and applied, and you actually practice that, right? And it takes a couple of days, not very long to learn it, something really odd happens. Very quickly, your brain rewires itself and you no longer need to think about it. Your brain and the more you practice, even if you're not born with the gift, all right, even if you're terrible at it, you can get competent at it very quickly. It's not like you have to script out everything you say for the rest of your life. Once you start getting into the rhythm and your brain starts to understand, it will naturally start applying tonalities at the right points in conversation. And that's the key. So the first step is understanding what they are. The next step is saying, where do you say them? Then how do I say it? And then actually technically applying it through practice and role playing. And then you're going to be clunky at first, of course. You're not going to be, no one's perfect at first, right? The old adage, kids walk. Every kid walks. Why? Well, at first they fall down, but the parents that give them encouragement. I don't want to repeat. That's an old Tony Robbins story.
No, it's true though.
but it's true. That's what I love telling you. It's a truism, right? But the point is that like that's how you learn. And I think some of the problems is like they're scared to look ridiculous. Well, guess what? You know, if you don't not want to look a little bit ridiculous or sound a bit wooden in the beginning, well, you're never going to get perfect. But it doesn't take long to get perfect. And it's worth it. It's worth it.
By the way, you're all welcome, because this is stuff that you really don't. You watch people that you connect with do these things well, and if you're not aware, if you're not conscious, it's like invisible why you connect with them, why they persuade you. Now you're learning from two persuasive people how to do it. Here's the other thing that you do really well, and it's silence. So I've watched you speak on stage. We've actually not been backstage together, but we've been at many events where you're before me or after me and vice versa. And when I watch good stand-up comics, I watch good stage speakers, I watch great salespeople, they have a different level of the utilization and comfort level with silence in a conversation, right? And this is like a nuance most people don't realize. And it's just, I want them inside what you and I would talk about. Talk about the idea of using or being comfortable with silence.
Yeah. We call it uncomfortable silences. And what happens is people that don't really communicate well, they feel the need to jump in and fill the vacuum.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
So, yeah. And obviously there's nothing wrong with silence. Okay. But even like in sales, you know, especially in persuasion, right? You know, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, so listen twice as much as you speak, right? But like that's kind of, you know, okay, and it's true. But when you speak, you want to say something that matters. And when you listen, you don't want to listen like, they'll hate you. It's more, wow, yup, This active listening, yup, nodding your head, okay, leaning back when someone's like, scratching, yup, totally. So it's just sort of like this communication. When you're not speaking, you're communicating all the time.
What about also asking the second question? I just want to ask you about that. So to me, when I think someone's really listening to me, they've asked me a question and then I've answered it, and then they'll ask like a clarification question or the next layered question. And then I'm like, oh, they're really connecting with me. Whereas most people are like, I'm in sales now, I've learned to ask questions, and it's just like this robotic process of even podcasts like this. It's like robotic. Like they didn't even hear what you said. They're on to the next thing on their list, right? Whereas like I'm listening to you, and there's a second and a third and maybe even a fourth question down the line.
Right. So this is well, it's funny you say that, because it's like literally like dead on balls accurate. So like when I teach people like, you know, the art of prospecting, gathering intelligence, right? You know, one of the rules is you want to, you know, go from big picture questions to smaller picture questions, less invasive questions to more. Like the first question you ask someone, if you're trying to get someone to like, you know, invest in the stock market, I mean, how much money you have in the bank? It's like, yourself. It's like, so, you know, how long you been in the market? How long you been in the market for? What do you typically like? You like tech? You like questions anybody would answer. Ask 4 or 5 of those. And by the way, what do you typically put into an idea? You know, ballpark. Yeah, and how much you have in the market? Oh, they'll tell you, right?
Right.
So all these rules, but one of the key rules, and there's 2 sides to this, is I'm going to take it even a layer deeper, right? Absolutely, it's about keeping a logical progression, okay, and asking these follow-ups, like unpacking, not ping-ponging. Someone asks you a question, you get an answer. If that answer dictates a follow-up, you need to follow up on that question and dig a bit deeper to get to the next layer. And in addition to that, if you want to really impress people, is almost when someone says something, and you should be an expert in what you're selling in the field, whatever problem you're trying to solve, you want to clarify what they said in a way that makes it even more powerful, so you mirror back to them. So let me understand this. And then if you really have some insights, some industry insight, even explain it more to them, like exactly, boom. Then they're like, holy this guy gets it. He knows it. Wow. And you can really impress people. So you're not only following up with more questions, you're also clarifying what they said and even maybe giving insight, not insight. If something, you have the ability to show tidbits of industry knowledge, it keeps building you up in their mind as an expert. He's a real expert versus being a novice or just like, you know, someone in the middle. So yeah, keeping this logical flow, making sure that you ask follow-ups. Don't ask them if there's nothing to follow up on, but when they're obviously there, you want to ask them, and you also want to make sure that you are communicating back to them, that you understand them, and that maybe you even are adding value right from there by clarifying their statements and adding on even other problems. So you might also be then running into this, correct? No, yeah, exactly.
So last sales question. This is so good. I wasn't going to ask you this one, but since you said it, you said expert, right? What about just the mindset of your approach? Do you think if I'm in sales or anything, I sell cars, I own a dry cleaners and you walk in, it doesn't matter. That's still a form of sales, right? Do you believe that the mindset I should have if I'm a realtor, let's just say, I assume the mindset of an authority in that industry? Like, I think this escapes most people. I'm like, I don't know if this person really is any good at, like, if I'm going to have knee surgery, I don't want it to be your third one. Like, I want a great knee surgeon, right? So do you think as a salesperson, one of the key things is to assume the role, the mindset, the posture of an authority, like just being an authority in your industry, or do you not buy into that?
No, it's an absolute must, and I'll tell you why. And it's one of the things that holds a lot of people back, especially in the beginning, because the key is that human beings, intuitively, we know what experts are supposed to look like and sound like. And we also know what they don't look like and sound like. We know that. And we've been exposed to this since we're very small. When we were very young, if we were sick, our parents took us to a doctor. And we noticed how the doctor dressed a certain way, acted a certain way. Even our own parents deferred to the doctor. He had diplomas on the wall, and everyone treated him with respect because he had gone to school for many years and learned everything there was to know about making sick people better. And when you went in to see the doctor, what did he do? He started asking you questions and examining you. And when he asked you a question, you didn't say, well, what do you want to know that, doc? How about that? No, you answer his questions honestly and forthrightly. Why? Because he's an expert. And then he asked you a series of questions. And then when he was done, he didn't say, okay, have a nice day. You're like, what? He said, okay, well, based on what you said, let me tell you, here's what's going on. He tells you what's happening and then gives you a prescription, if necessary, a procedure, whatever it might be, and gives you the solution. So we look and that's how we've been trained all life. When we were growing up, if we wanted to learn a sport, our parents would hire us a coach who was an expert. A tutor. When we got older into business, if you had problems, you would hire a lawyer, an accountant. We seek out experts to help us solve our problems and eliminate pain points. And when we're in the presence of someone, and here's the important thing, that we believe to be an expert, we defer. We allow the expert to control the flow of the encounter. That's what we do. When we are in the presence of someone we believe is a novice, we will try to control the encounter and cut them off, take them out into Pluto, and all bad things start to happen. Now, the problem is that when people start in an industry and start in sales, they feel like, well, I'm not an expert at selling cars yet, so I really can't sound like one until I am. Okay? You put me on a call and I'll sound like a expert like in 7 minutes. Now, believe me, the night before I'd be up for 12 hours learning everything about cars. And I'm not saying to lie. I'm saying you want to actually act as if, and you better become an expert and close that gap really quick. But there is absolutely nothing that you don't have to like pretend to be a novice. You can act like one before you're one and then quickly close that knowledge gap. And conversely, I know a lot of people who are stone cold experts and sound like novices, and they can't sell their way out of a paper bag. So it's not so much being one, it's sounding like one, but then of course you want to become one, and you don't want this to be like just a facade. You need to be an expert.
You guys, this is so good. I got to tell you, like, that's why I wanted Jordan on. I just want to remind the audience of this. I'll tell you this too. My dad was an alcoholic, drug addict till I was 15, and then my dad got sober. And like anybody who gets sober, typically there's someone who helps you or becomes your sponsor or whatever it is. The guy who helped my dad get sober was sober himself 31 days. That's it. So he was not an expert, but what he was is he cared. What he did is he sounded like an expert, but he wasn't one. So a lot of you think that you've got to have, you got to be the best in the world at what you do. Yeah, you do eventually, but in the interim, you can still make a lot of sales. You can still help a lot of people. One of those sales on getting sober was my dad, from a dude who was only sober 31 days. And I'm sitting here with all of you guys today, I think in large part because that did happen with my dad. So just remember the ripple effect of helping one person, even in the beginning of your career. Now, here's what is the best part about everything Jordan teaches. Then we're going to shift gears to AI in a second, but which is ethical selling. And I think just because of the Wolf of Wall Street, like if they didn't encounter you the last trillion years since the movie, right, and seen your work, which there are people here today that haven't, we're not talking about manipulation here. We're not talking about trying to get somebody to do something that's not good for them. I just want you to speak to that, because any time in the world now where you start teaching people how to persuade or communicate, even like how I was raised, I got it. It's all like sleight of hand and trickeration over here. But that's not what we're talking about.
There's a few parts that, so clearly that's not that. And I always say, like, you're not using the straight line system. You're not using it because you want to get people to do things they shouldn't do or buy things they shouldn't buy. It's the opposite, right? It's about getting people to overcome these internal and mostly irrational barriers they have to taking action to get things they actually should get and solve problems they need to solve. There are some people, for example, that have what I call a very high action threshold. Their belief systems, their experiences are such, the way they're just wired, makes it very difficult for them to make a decision. They will torture themselves. They're painfully slow when it comes to decisions. And they hate salespeople. They don't want to be persuaded. And very often those people go through life lacking a lot of things they need and don't have their problem solved. My dad was one of them. I love, may he rest in peace, a wonderful dad, but he hated salespeople, which is pretty funny, right? And ironic, at least.
Yep.
Ironically, though, it was just that, like, people like that, well, how do they buy shit? Like, if they're that tough, well, they buy things when they're desperate, and because just when the pain gets so bad, then suddenly that action threshold drops, right? So, like, but once they buy from someone, that's their guy. Like my dad, he had his car guy. Like Vinny was car guy. Vinny at the Sunoco station, the local. Like no one's touching my dad's Dodge Dart, but Vinny. Like if Enzo Ferrari said, Max, I'm going to fix your car for free. I'm going to make it. Enzo, don't touch my car. Okay. Only Vinny can. That was my dad with everything. Now, I'll tell you a great story, though. When I was about 12, and he was like that with everything. He had a car guy. He had a shirt guy. He had one barber. One guy for everything. And they could be ripping his eyeballs out, overcharged. Oh, Vinny's my guy, and that's that, right? Because they don't want, that's how it happens, right? New York to Florida, New York to Williamsburg, Colonial Williamsburg, whatever it was. We were like 3 hours outside of New York, right? On the way down south. And we're like not great part of the country, right? Like, hillbilly, and my father's car overheats. It's myself, my mother, my brother, my dad's driving the Dodge Dart, right? And smoke starts coming out of the radiator, and it's like 5:30 p.m. and the sun's like start to set. And you know what my dad did? He went to the first gas station he could find and said, "Fix my car. I don't care how much it costs." It could have said, the name of the gas station could have been Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, and he still would have done it, because at that point, the worry he was feeling causes his action threshold to drop to zero. Just fix it. I don't care. Right now, in persuasion, we can use that to help people, like my father, make great decisions that they should be making by uncovering what are their pain points. What are they really worried about? What is that deep worry that rests at the base of their skull and keeps them up all night long? And the way you uncover that is through intelligence gathering, by asking questions and digging deeper, as we were speaking about. And once you have that information, you don't want to say, "Oh, I saw a problem." No, I'm not just saying. You want to amplify that. Let them really understand what is costing and what the problem is, what's holding them back. And then you want to reserve that. And later on in the conversation, when they're really in that point, they won't make a decision. You say, "Listen, let me ask you this," and you reintroduce that pain. Let them understand what's truly at stake. It's very powerful.
Masterclass, everybody. You're welcome. You're welcome. This is so good. I mean, I'm actually processing this, thinking, I love when I'm in the middle of doing a podcast. I'm like, this is going to download like crazy because the content is so good.
Ed, I don't interrupt, but you do all this automatically. You are a great communicator, right?
Thank you.
So what happens is all the things I'm saying are part of the straight line system. But so it's a system. But what happens is great communicators, great closers, they do all this. They do it unconsciously.
Yep. Yeah, and some of it, by the way, some of it is actually consciously. And so also when you're a professional communicator and you hear someone speak truthfully about how to do it correctly, it's a validation. You're like, I do that. That's true for me. I see all this online guru stuff from these sales trainers, and I'm like, that's just crap. That's not how it works. That's not the real world. And by the way, that's not even ethical what you're teaching. And so that's why what you're talking about, I resonate with so much. So many of you have asked how to see me speak live, and for the first time ever, you can come see me speak live in person. All of my speeches have been private events, but now I'm teaming up with LifeSurge, speaking all over the country. LifeSurge is a one-day faith-based event where you'll walk in hungry for success, and you'll leave ready to build your resources to leave an impact on others. We're talking faith-fueled finance, growing your resources, crushing obstacles, and then, using it all for something way bigger than yourself. I'm joining LifeSurge in a few cities this year, and I'd love to see you there. I'll be sharing the stage with legends such as two-time football champion Tim Tebow, star of Duck Dynasty Willie Robertson, and leadership hero of mine John Maxwell, pastor and author Craig Groeschel, and worship with artists like Natalie Grant. Tickets are on sale at lifesurge.com. And just for my listeners, you can use the code ED30 for 30% off a ticket. There will be a link in the show notes, so click through and take some time to join us. Cities are being added all the time, so if you don't see one near you now, check back. I hope to see you there. So a little bit of a name dropper thing. I want to shift a little bit because we don't have too much time, but you're doing stuff in AI right now. You were telling me off camera where you got some huge success in that lane already as well. So it's an ironic Leo thing. I was sitting in an event about 5 months ago, and Leo was sitting next to me, who played you in the movie, right? And by the way, he's not a talkative dude until you get the ball rolling a little bit.
Great guy, though, by the way. He's a great guy.
He's a great guy. I got to know him that night. He's a terrific guy.
You know me? Because we're friends.
Of course I did. How do you think I bridged the gap? I dropped your name. Of course I did. And there's another actor there that's actually a really good friend of mine, which also helped. But anyway, I asked them both. I said, what's different in the movie business than say 5-10 years ago? And like their heads almost dropped, like, oh bro, like streaming's changed everything, number one, the way we shoot the movies. But I said, what's the biggest one? He goes, it's just starting, but it's AI. And he goes, the way movies are going to be shot, what budgets we're going to be allowed to do, how scenes are set up, it's how writing is going to be done. It's a real tsunami coming to our industry, and I don't know where it's all going to land. And then I started to think about what we do, meaning anything sales related, anything anyone's doing. Like I certainly wouldn't mind being a plumber right now because I think those dudes are safe. But like, what are your overall thoughts or advice to people listening about this thing coming our way called AI when it comes to sales, but also just, entrepreneurship in general? You've obviously decided to get out in front of this, cram course. When I met you, if I said you'd be coding the morning that we're doing my podcast someday, you'd be like, what the heck is coding? Like, there's no way. So take them through kind of what you've done to get in front of it and your thoughts on it.
I got into artificial intelligence, maybe it was about 2 years ago, a little bit more maybe, right? We run people's sales operations and advise them, right? And they were trying to, some company, I forgot the name of it, maybe it was Air AI or something. Oh, we have a sales agent that's an AI, and it can go out there and close sales and do lead generation. And I didn't even hear about it directly. Someone else got pitched at the company, then said it to me. I said, well, let me hear it. And it sucked. Terrible, right? Then I went and looked at the pricing. The pricing was ridiculous back then, right? But it was not good. The latency was terrible. You could fool it in 2 seconds. And it would say stupid shit, right? But that was the first shot across the bow. Maybe it was almost 2.5 years ago, maybe even 3. Wow. So it was early, right? It was when Chat GPT, it was like 3.0 maybe. It was like a really lot. But I'm always very nice to AI because when they rule us, it's not going to kill me. I love my AI.
Right.
A friend of mine, good friend of mine, a top VC, Shervin Pishavar, and I, his good friend, we were out for dinner. I told him this, and I said, if we could build an AI, imagine if I could have a digital twin Jordan that knew everything, and we could teach this thing to sell like me. That would be freaking amazing. And so began this venture, that we first funded it ourselves. And I spent about a year just wasting money because I had to learn about technology, all right, and engineers and good ones and bad ones. But I went on a massive crash course. I'm really I am so technical, you wouldn't even believe it, how technical I am about artificial intelligence, coding, and architecture. And so I had to because I'm a believer in any business you're in. If you don't know that business, you don't know the interest, you are going to get slammed. Your people will lie to you. They'll take it. Not that they even need to, but they just get you can't tell fact from fiction, blah, 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 right? And then I got lucky in the sense that the tailwinds, and I knew this wasn't really luck. I knew that the AI would improve, the models would improve. That was obvious to me. So I always built it from the sense that I'm not worried. I'm not building this application for what AI can do today. I'm trying to catch this when it's ready in a year and a half from now. So I didn't go into this trying to build a sales agent that can get on a telephone call and qualify a lead. I didn't do that. I have that, and we do that. We have a company that does that. That's child's play. It's nothing, right? Okay, do it in 2 seconds, right? I said, I want to build an AI that can freaking close a complex sale, carry on a conversation over 2 months if it has to, with callbacks, texting, email, persistent memory, an omni-channel agent that can actually handle a conversation, complex insurance, financial services, mortgages, and literally close like me. When it's still, people don't think it's still, we do it, okay? And it's still not quite ready, just to be clear. It's like another 2 months away from full enterprise ready. So we're still in stealth mode, right? Because it's very difficult to do that. Like what I'm saying, it's not like, it is not, whatever you think about AI, these things are Einstein and Forrest Gump at the same time. That's what they are, okay? And you can't, where people mostly fall down with this stuff is the model is only one part of it. Okay, you need a very complex architecture around the model with persistent memory, state management, routers that keep the model honest. There's all these different it's a very complex application. And once you have that architecture, then you can start handling conversation that can run 30 minutes, an hour. You can have a conversation that goes 8 minutes. And, can you call me back at 3:00 this afternoon? I got, sure, no problem. And it remembers where you are, picks up where it left off, and sends you a text in the middle, calls you back in a week, collects dot. So that's what I've been building with my team. Yeah. But the plan is, well, we're already post revenue, but we're going to really launching now over the next 30 days, big scaling. And then we're going to do a Series A at the end of probably, hopefully, May or June. My partner is a massive player in the VC space. Maybe Uber, Airbnb, Robin, a big player. So we'll partner. Have a great team. They've got 15 engineers full time.
By the way, remember whose son helped you with your golf clubs. Just what I'm saying. I want to know, that sounds good for you and sounds good for the world. Doesn't sound so good if I were in real estate or insurance though, right? What's your overall, 30,000 foot view? Because look, let's be honest, we also make money from people that are in the sales industry as well. But what would you say to somebody who's sitting there going, what do I do now? I'm in my car right now driving to my sales appointment, and am I going to be replaced by a robot?
Yeah. So here's what I would say. I give Google so much credit and so much respect because that's the classic, the innovator's dilemma, right? In other words, they own the search market. And if you're going to have AI suddenly making general search with ads obsolete or semi-obsolete or not, the first thing you want to do, which is true, right? Google would say, well, I'm not going to put AI into my search, but they did. And if you notice, they did a very smart thing. That's brilliant. That's what companies up was they say, I'm holding on. I have to protect what I have. So I'm not going to innovate and move forward. I can't make myself obsolete. And then someone else makes them obsolete. Okay. Now, I will say this.
That right there, not interrupt you. That right there, all you entrepreneurs, that's a huge lesson. What he just said right there. Don't protect territory trying to remain, protect yourself from being obsolete, because that's how you become it. Ask Blockbuster Video when they had a chance to just scoop up Netflix for $9. So just stay in there. Okay.
Frame it differently. If you don't disrupt yourself, someone else will disrupt you.
Wow.
Say it like that, right? And so yet, their search revenue is still booming.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, there's always going to be a need for salespeople. Always. Now, do I think things like lead gen is going to get commoditized? Yes. But It's certainly are going to be AIs out there selling. It's very, very difficult to do. It is, I am telling you, it is to get an AI to really have a sales conversation. They're not designed for that.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you why. Because to be a great salesperson, you need to be in control of the conversation. And the way you get into control is by being perceived as an expert. By being perceived as an expert, on the ball, sharp, enthusiastic, people will defer, allow you to control the flow of a conversation, which allows you then to ask questions in a certain way, present in a certain way, and allows you to take what would otherwise be a chaotic conversation that could go in a million directions and move it down the straight line. That's the straight line system, right?
Mhm.
AI is designed the opposite. You ask it a question, it gives you an answer. It's reactive.
Yeah, good point.
And to be a great salesperson, you're going to be proactive. So it's very, very difficult to get artificial intelligence to sell well. Really, it requires a massive amount of architecture, prompting, prompt engineering, context engineering, right?
Mhm.
But the point is, like, we are at this something called the singularity, like where you can't look past the horizon, event horizon, and say, I don't know what the is going to happen in 5 years from now. But what I do know is this: nothing is certain, but with great certainty, is that a lot of the jobs that we have right now, yeah, they're going to be replaced, but there'll be more jobs created. And I think that there's going to be a shift. I think it's so much easier right now to be an entrepreneur. It is so much easier right now to start businesses, to do whatever you want to do cheaply, effectively, efficiently. And, AI can be a great mentor, but the problem is they will tell you everything is good, which is really problematic. In other
Mhm.
words, if you don't, collaborating with an AI is an art. I collaborate I have like multiple AIs, and I am on these very high level plans. I'm on all these pro level plans, and I have APIs into them for
Mhm.
unlimited usage, right? With the highest level of intelligence. But if you're not an expert yourself, it's going to tell you everything is good, every idea is perfect, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't work out that way. But what it can do is, if you know what you're doing, or at least if you're careful and you work with it and you learn the art of essentially how do you prompt an AI, how do you actually keep it going in the direction, right? How do you let it play devil's advocate, or even have two? One, you say, listen, someone gave me this idea, it's the stupidest idea. Just tell me why this is not good. Why is this the stupidest, dumbest idea I've ever heard?
Right.
And one idea is creating the idea, if you help you. They're the one saying how bad it is. And then you got to start to see the truth. Because if you only have them telling you how good it is, they'll just tell you, they'll find statistics. And if they don't exist, they'll make them up. Okay. But the point I'm making is this, to get back to your question, is that will some salespeople be replaced? Yeah, for sure. And there'll be new sales jobs created that are probably even higher paying and other
Mhm.
things like that. So, but you can't live your life worrying about what's going to happen. You have to sit there and be on the edge of what's happening, and
Mhm.
disruptions are going to happen.
All right. Speaking of living your life, this has been really tremendous. This will be my last question for you. But it's just on living life in general. This is more like a broad question, but I want to step back because I want people just to hear from you. There's two ways to live your life to me. There's the decision to be just average and ordinary and exist, which is what a lot of people settle into doing in their life. And then there's this other decision and a set of actions that go with it for life, which is what you've done. I mean, those of you that are on audio, you can't see this, but the view behind this man is like beautiful. He's chosen, even having been knocked down, even got incarcerated, he's chosen, I want to live an extraordinary life. I want to live greatly. I want to touch my potential. I want to have a great life rich of memories and friendships and all that. I'm just curious, like, if you'd speak to that, why should everybody choose to go, as corny as it sounds, man, like we're two dudes now halfway through our life probably, right? That have chosen to pursue our dreams in our life. And what's come with that is a lot of ups and downs, a lot of critics, a lot of crap, a lot of stress, the amount of which most people will never understand, the amount of work, the amount of huge lows and tremendous highs. Sell me on why I should pursue that life if I'm listening to it today.
Here's what I would say: everyone has to have their own vision for their future, what they want. You know, I'll go to one extreme, Mother Teresa, right? Yeah. Well, what was her what was her currency of value was helping people. She didn't care about money. It didn't matter to her. Money that was not her value. Her value is how many people could I touch and help and soothe and heal, right? She's rich as Elon Musk in her own world, right? Now, you have other people, like you and I mean, like, listen, I will tell you this very simple. I've been a rich man and been extremely happy. I've been a rich man and been very unhappy, very miserable. I've been poor and very miserable as well. But never once in my life since I'm an adult have I been poor and happy. It is a real issue. Now, I'm not saying you have to be the richest person in the world, but if there's a certain amount of money you need to make, if you want to live a great life, if you want to really, enjoy the finer things and really be able to go after your interests and have free time and have good medical care, a nice place to live, take care of your family, your children, donate to the places and the causes that you believe in, and just have fun, then there's going to be a certain amount of money you need to make. That number is up to you. It's different for everybody. What I would say is this: you got to get first very clear on what your vision for the future is. Where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What life do you want? And then you better make sure that your desire, you have that vision, your standard, your work ethic is congruent with that. If you have champagne vision and a beer work ethic, a beer standard, that ain't gonna work out so well. All right, bottom line.
So good. This has been I'm really glad we did it. This has been like a really great conversation. Thank you, by the way, for doing this today on a Saturday. You guys, yeah, bro, well, I want to see you in person again. And take your money on the golf course. You guys go get Straight Line Sales Course, which is his course. He's also got a book called The Wolf of Investing, which could help you with the latter part that he just talked about. And share this episode, you guys. I bet you this is a side of Jordan not all of you have heard or seen before, and that's what I wanted to accomplish today. It's the side that I've seen and the one that I like. So, Jordan, thanks, brother. It was great. All right, God bless you. Max out.